We are starting a series this week on our memories of the Jacksonville Jaguars, all the way from the beginning. So, as the song says, what we about to do now is go back. We're gonna start with the early years here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Right, it is your team every day, and I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm just going to remind you to go on over to that YouTube page, right? Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, so you make sure you get an episode every time we drop one, and then hit that bell so you get notifications each and every time we drop an episode. Now, if you're in your car, if you're at work and you're sneaking, wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure, whatever audio platform that is, you tap in every single day to make sure you don't miss an episode of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. That's right. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Shout out to the everydayers for joining me here every single day. You can be one. If you're not one, all you got to do is join me here every single day. That's right. All right. So we ain't going to bury the lead. Here's what we're going to do. First of all, I have to say this. Happy Memorial Day. And as a veteran, I know a lot of people, I make this announcement every year. I thank you all for your well wishes, your gratitude for service. But today is not about veterans. It's about a select group of veterans. And those veterans, unfortunately, sacrificed. They sacrificed their lives for our freedom. So we want to make sure that all of the love today goes to those folks and their families. So happy Memorial Day. I know we usually celebrate this with a bunch of cookouts and all of that stuff. So I hope y'all getting it in and listening to Locked On Jaguars. Now, let me skip all the way to the end. We're going to focus on the early years. Why are we focusing on the early years? By the time I get to segment 3, you're going to be dying for me to tell you something about the early years. Because what I'm talking about now is the most memorable Jags moments. And we're going to go over that in segment 2 and tell you all week how we have something special for you with the most memorable Jags moments. I'm going to start with the early years, though, here on Locked On Jaguars, the early days, if you will, but not the way you think. So I grew up here in Jacksonville, Florida, and every Jaguar fan has, every older Jaguar fan has a story. Anybody born in the last 30 years probably doesn't have one, because you probably were born, if you're a Jacksonville native, or if your family is a Jacksonville native, you probably were born, I wouldn't say with a silver spoon in your mouth, you were born with a teal pacifier in your mouth, because what you did was you came out of the womb and automatically the Jacksonville Jaguars were the team that you rooted for. Understandably, that's what happens all the time. I got a weird situation, though. I grew up in D.C., there's this weird fascination with the Dallas Cowboys if you live in Washington. So it's almost like I see folks going at it about Caitlin Clark. Like, why is she getting all of this hate? And it ain't hate, So if you look at that situation, what it is Jerry Jones even said it, that there are more Dallas Cowboys, and there's a reason I'm bringing up the Washington franchise, but there are more Dallas Cowboy fans in the DMV area than there are outside of the state of Texas. And I absolutely believe it 100%, because I lived there back and forth for a long time, most of my whole life, even when I was a kid. So sometimes what happens is folks just naturally get sick of whatever it is you stuff it down their throat, and they don't want it to win, so they root against the other thing. So that's what I grew up feeling and seeing as a kid whose mom moved to Washington, D.C. There was no Jacksonville Jaguars franchise at that time. There wasn't. It wasn't a franchise at all. So I'm giving you my personal history with the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I always thought they deserved it, because the city is football crazy. All you got to do is go look at Friday nights. And then Saturday afternoon all the way until midnight, folks are glued in front of their TV, rooting for their fans, arguing back and forth with each other. And this was even before social media. So the state of Florida, because of its high schools, because of its college play, because of how many kids come from Florida that go on to the NBA, has always seemed like a place where football should thrive, especially here in Jacksonville in North Florida. Yep, you're right. It is. And every time I say you're right, I know there's somebody that they're going, yeah, he's telling the truth. And so I'm agreeing back with you, right? So the one thing I had to adjust to that these new fans, that the new Jaguar fans, the millennials, I guess they want to call them, didn't have to, is I had to transition from a lifelong love affair with the Washington franchise. And this wasn't just because the Jaguars didn't have one. No, my mom lived in D.C. and then she moved to PG County, Maryland, which was a 5-minute drive. Well, actually, the building we lived in, once we came out of the building, it took me longer to get from my apartment to the front to the lobby of the building than it did to take me to get from the lobby of the building and cross the street and go into Washington, D.C. That's just how the building was named City Line Towers, right? So me as a Jaguars fan, this is why I always said that I was a fan of Jacksonville, Florida. You get it now? I was a fan of Jacksonville, Florida, because half the people that know me know and knew that I grew up a diehard Washington fan. They had an old nickname back then, but that's all right. I was a diehard Washington fan. I went to Super Bowl parades. They let us out of school early. It was cold. And I stood there for 5-6 hours cheering on dudes that looked at me through a bus window. Right? So you win Super Bowls. You win 3 Super Bowls in 11 years. I'm in the military. I end up living in D.C., going to games, investing my time. And all of a sudden, I'm hearing rumors in 1995 that the Jacksonville Jaguars actually might get this team. Now, I'm going to tell you why I had a little bit of Stockholm Syndrome. It's because when I was in high school, I heard the Houston Oilers were moving to Jacksonville, and Bud Adams even flew his helicopter into the old Gator Bowl, where I used to sell seat cushions because it was all bleachers. I used to sell seat cushions to Jacksonville Bulls in the USFL. I was like 4 of us. I was at one gate. I think right now the gate that I was at is called Gate 4. It might be Gate 2 or Gate 3. I don't know which one it was, but I can tell you this. I think it's Gate 4. I sold so many orange snapbacks that go on the bleachers. It was the New Jersey Generals, owned by Donald Trump, with Herschel Walker and Doug Flutie. The Jacksonville Bulls. And what I had to do was I sold everybody in the whole stadium. I had one, and the stadium was full of 70,000 people. So that's 17,000 people I probably ended up giving one of those bleachers to. So I am Jacksonville to the bone gristle. And when I was sitting on the edge of my bed in Fort Washington, Maryland, and I heard that they were getting a team. I told my mom and my then ex-wife, I'm moving home. I'm a barber, maybe a law enforcement officer. I was on the waiting list to be a cop up in Maryland. All of these things. When my city got a football team, I told the team that for 27, 28 years that I ate, slept, and drank about Washington. I told them, Norv Turner and Heath Schuler, I am going home. And I came back to Jacksonville at the end of 1995, beginning of 1996. And I've been here, been invested in teal and black ever since. Can't tell you the depth chart in Washington. I probably can't give you, out of the starting 22 guys, I can probably only name 5 of them. I don't care anymore. I sold out to the Jacksonville Jaguars because I love the city and I love the people here. Why was I in D.C.? Because I was making money. I make a lot of money. Doing security work, hanging around celebrities and nightclubs and dancers. But I was making a lot of money, right? But I decided to come home. And I came home for a good reason. And the reason is it's because I know this is a special place. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to tell you all about, over the next 2 segments, that first year, what it felt like, to give you the energy. as I transition through the week, I'm going to go through some other things too, because I'm going to include everybody. There's not just going to be, just about that era, but we're going to talk about getting the team today, putting 28 years of leaving another team behind me. Then that first training camp where I wasn't a media member, but I was pretty cool with a lot of media members because I had done some pseudo media work, and they allowed me to kind of get close enough, hang up on the fence. This was 2-a-days. It was a whole different world back then. I think we even got soft, but I'm going to explain that to you. I'm going to explain, give you a hint at some of the other memories that I've had that might outdate some of you guys. We'll talk about all of those things as we continue more here on Locked On Jaguars in just a second. After I tell you guys about FanDuel. That's right, man. If you don't hurry up and get going, you're going to miss out on a good thing because it is the playoffs. It is unpredictable, but here's what you do know. There ain't no load management. Everybody is playing their butts off in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Now, the Edmonton Oilers went up there yesterday and shocked the Dallas Stars. They tore my little ticket up, but that's okay because that's exactly the kind of wager you can get in on and make you some money because they were not the favorites. And then if you bet $5, you get $150 in bonus bets to bet on more wagers. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com to look at odds to make sure you're on point. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make every playoff shot count. It's FanDuel. We are Locked On Jaguars. I am the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, Tony Wiggins, and this is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Decided to do a little series of where we're going to have the best memories. And not all of them are good, but it's the thing that we remember the most. A lot of things make up your DNA or your football memories when you think of a team. All of them aren't good. You remember the good stuff. You remember the good stuff, and you remember how good it made you feel. But there's some bad stuff that happened too, and you remember how bad that made you feel because that's all a part of being a fan. You know, there's this ebb and flow, right? This up and down, and they have had a ton of them throughout the years. I do think, though, when you think about fandom, and I mentioned this on yesterday's show, whenever you get to the point where you wonder, like you listen to some fans and you say they sound delusional, right? Then you wonder where that delusion comes from. If you're a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, I really wonder where the delusion comes from. I know for a fact it has to be just optimism. And I'm not talking about lying to yourself. What I'm talking about is being so free and willy-nilly just to be able to move forward, like everything's going to go according to plan. When in the past, 75% of the times, everything never went according to plan. And even when it did go according to plan, it lasted. It was real brief. We talked yesterday about how the Jaguars have never had a sustained run, but they've had 4 times where they've gone to the playoffs and they have been looking real good. They've been to 3 AFC championship games and they made a run, and then they didn't follow it up the following year. And the fans never have this long sustained thing that they can call, look, I just wonder how it feels. I'm not talking about Patriot fans because that's weird. I'm not even talking about Chiefs fans. I'm just think of a really, really solid, think of a 49er fan right now. Haven't won it lately, but they've been pretty decent, right? They've been pretty good. Pretty good. Baltimore is another example. Don't you want to wake up knowing that your team can roll out of bed and at least win 10, 11 games and make a wild card? Like, that's the worst thing that's going to happen to them. Well, those teams I just mentioned, that's about the worst thing that's going to happen. We got to get to the point. So the only way you can tell why fans are the way that they are about a specific team, especially if you don't follow them close enough, is to look at their past or just ask somebody. I'm glad you asked because I'm going to tell you. Never had a sustained 2-year run. The Jaguar fans have never had a chance to get used to winning. They thought it was going to happen early because what happened early? Well, they played their inaugural season. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I went to any game that year. I did not. I had 3 small kids in daycare. I did not go to a football game that season, but I watched every one of them on my grandmother's couch having Sunday dinner. And we were really, really invested in those Jacksonville Jaguars. And let me tell you, because of the expansion draft, they were a little bit more competitive early on than you thought. Tony Baselli was clearly very, very good from the very beginning. And they found some stuff. Going into that second year was really good because that's when they found Jimmy Smith. And I don't know if that's exactly when they quote unquote found it, but that's when they decided he was going to play and he was going to be their guy. And they went and got Keenan McCardell, and then they drafted Fred Taylor. And we're like, hey man, they're on to something, right? I mean, just think about this out of the box. Tom Coughlin went, peep game. Tom Coughlin went, Tony Baselli, Fred Taylor. He went Tony Baselli, Fred Taylor, Kevin Hardy. These are the first. James Stewart was in there too. I think it was Tony Baselli, and then there was James Stewart, and then there was Fred Taylor, and then there was Kevin Hardy. The Jaguars used to nail their first round picks, and then they go in the second round, and they nail them with all of those guys, Chris Manawai and just all of the defensive players, Tony Brackens, Rasheem Mathis. They were crushing it back in the day. They were. If you want to go all the way to MJD and Mercedes in 06, the Jaguars were crushing the draft with first and second round picks. And that's why, and they did a real good job of evaluating free agency, which is why guys like Jeff Lageman, who are still mainstays here, and guys like Tom McManus, who knew Tom Coughlin in college, and other guys, to this day, some of the most popular Jaguar players are still the Smingies and the Dave Waddells and the Tom McManuses. Those guys, man, because it was such a magical time. And this is the thing that I said about winning yesterday, or not yesterday, Friday. Winning cures everything, man. Winning changes the way people feel about their team, their franchise. Just think that those guys were 20, 25, 26 years ago, and they are still beloved. And I ain't mentioned the stars. I ain't mentioned Ring of Honor guys. I mentioned regular people. They are still beloved. Tony Brackens is still beloved in this city. Still beloved in this city. I'm going to tell you why during that first year, how things not the first year, but that first wave. We're going to the second year now. How things were looking so up that the Jaguars ended up in the AFC Championship game against the Patriots and were an incompletion in the red zone away from tying or winning the game. So how do you start out like that and then you think it's going to just last? Like you got a good taste of it and it's going to go on forever. It's going to go on forever. Comes back 4 years later and then doesn't come back for a long time. You can't tell me, ask any Jaguar fan from that period. Any Jaguar fan from that period. And I know this isn't the most memorable moments. These are moments. This is a whole time frame. This is a moment, but it's not like one play. We got a lot of that coming this week. Morton Anderson, Natron Means, Rasheem Mathis, Tony Brackens, Fred Taylor. Y'all know where I'm going, but I'm going to do those in another show. And that one is going to be called The Damn Year of the Damn Titans. Y'all already know where I'm going. That's year 2. So I'm trying not to speedball and get to year 2. But I'm telling you, man, I had to give you some backdrop about me, about the team, about the city, about why I feel the way I feel about some things and why I feel the fans have just been through it. And they get blamed for so much because it's so up and down. What fan would actually think that? What fan wouldn't be skeptical because of the way the Jaguars' history has gone? All of them should be skeptical. That's why I think the fan isn't skeptical, and the one that says, man, just chill out. Everything will be all right. I'm like, where you come from? Where you been? Like, you probably swim deep in the ocean without a tank on because you're superhuman. I don't know anybody that has that kind of patience. Like, now that we're here from a 1 year basis, yeah, we can do that. We can pump the brakes, but man, big picture, I understand why folks are angry and I understand why folks are upset because it's just been such an ebb and flow. You can't even fathom. If you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day, have to turn down the volume with all the shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm going to put a bow on it a little bit, but I'm going to leave it open-ended because the rest of this week, we're going to keep talking about memories, and some of them are going to be good, and some of y'all are going to be shaking your head like, why on earth did you bring that one up? Because I'm trying to make sure to go into this season with a good, sound mind. We're going to go into segment 3 at 1-2 in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. So I'm sitting there talking about games, right? Games of the past. There's some games of the future this year too. Look at that schedule. It's out. You got the dates, you got the times, and you know exactly where these games are going to be. I know you have to wait until you talk to your boss and check out your schedule and make sure your money's straight. But you ain't got to rush because Gametime app is here for you. Let me tell you what it'll do. It'll make sure that your last-minute ticket purchases are the best in the world if you have to wait until the last minute. They got last-minute deals where you save up to 60% off buying last-minute sports, concerts, comedy, theater, all of those tickets. Flash deals where you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. It's up to you, man. Just take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code that is LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, third, final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. A quick recap, talking about, first of all, happy Memorial Day to all of those that made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms here in the United States of America. We thank you and your families. It led us to think about the most memorable Jags moments, But basically, I talked about a time frame today, and that's when I found out. I'll give you a little bit of background on me and how I was moving back in the day. And then I found out they were getting the team. And then I moved back home because I wanted to be back home for something. I thought the city was going to turn upside down and be on, and was just going, the roof was going to blow off. And really it did in a certain way, but it was at a very, very measured way, right? I wonder sometimes if that early success messed Jags up. Did they have? I think they had the success because this is when they did the franchise draft, when they were allowing the Jaguars to get players from other teams and free agency with the extra draft capital to try to get them up to speed really, really fast. I think Coughlin was so good at that stuff that what happened is they got so good so fast that it created a monster. Think about it. In 4 years, they went to 2 AFC championship games. Their first 4 years. And I think it's significant that we say that because a lot of teams have done that in 4 years. I think Andy Reid and Philly did it. I'm talking about your first 4 years. That is unheard of. That would be equivalent to college where you have no players, sign nothing but freshmen, play them, and sign nothing but freshmen again and make it all the way to the college football playoff with 2 years of freshmen. That's ridiculous. And then you do it 2 years later and you ain't getting no transfers, you ain't getting nothing. So this is what happens. It's hard, man. And it's almost sounds like it's impossible. And it was a big boom. It was a good thing for Jacksonville early, but it wasn't sustainable. One, Tom Coughlin was a very good football coach and a good GM, better coach than GM. Had a really, really good staff, did everything right. Wayne Weaver and that crew, man, they did. Rick Reeprish, all of those guys, they did everything right. I think about all those coaches with Coughlin, Don Capers and Chris Palmer and Kevin Gilbride. They had some coaches, Dean Pease, man, they had some people on this team. It's the who's who of football guys, like mentally, like, you know what I'm saying? And it was the perfect start. With that brain trust, it's a good thing that everything was empty because they were going to fill it up real quick, especially with the rules that the NFL had given them. but it spoiled the Jaguar fans a little bit. I think it created some excitement. The excitement was a little bit short-lived because the Jaguars haven't had a 4-year stretch that good since then. In fact, they have had 2 stretches or 3 where they really made decent playoff runs, and they didn't get that far. So those first 4 years, the 2 deepest playoff runs they've ever had, until 2017 when they did it again. I really want to know how many teams in their first 3 chances. I don't know the answer. I'm gonna try to type it up real quick, but I don't think it's gonna be. How many teams went to 3 conference championships and never won? And never won in the NFL? That's a good question. That's a really good question. I'm looking it up right now. Because, I guess you could say Philly. Philly did it with Andy Reid. Didn't they say they went to 4 times? Most conference championship losses with an NFL team. All right, so this is going to be close. They're going to have the Jaguars on here, I already see, because the last team listed, although they do have the Jaguars on here. The Jaguars are right smack in the middle. There are the Ravens, Jaguars, Chiefs, Browns, Bears, and Chargers are all teams that have lost 3 championship games. The 49ers have lost 11. They've been there a lot, though, and they won some Super Bowls. The Steelers, 8. That's amazing considering they won more Super Bowls than anybody, and they got 8 losses. The Raiders, Packers. Well, the Raiders have 7. The Packers, Rams, Vikings, and Cowboys all have 6 losses. Then it's the Patriots, Jets, Eagles, Titans. They go to Eagles. There you go. Patriots, Jets, Eagles, Titans, and Colts. Good. The Titans lost 4. Good. But I think they might be including Houston in that. And the Colts, of course, Baltimore, even though Baltimore probably didn't. Yeah, they did. Baltimore had some success. But yeah, the Cardinals have only been the Arizona Cardinals, the only team in the NFL has only been to 1 championship game. Even the Detroit Lions have been to 2. So yeah, the thing is I think the Jaguars are right smack in the middle of this, but they're also one of the youngest teams in the NFL. So that really makes this something that's very, very interesting when you look back. Now, I'm going to give y'all an idea of what we got coming up. All right. So tomorrow's show, the year of those damn Titans. The reason why I'm calling that show that is because the Jaguars won 15 games and they lost 3 games that year, and they lost all 3 to the team that eventually went to the Super Bowl, and that was the Tennessee Titans. They didn't win, though, so good. Wednesday, we're going with another team-related show that is not Jacksonville. All of those memorable games against Pittsburgh. We're going to talk about Greg Lloyd, Fred Taylor's career day, Rasheen intercepting the ball at the beginning of the game, and then Roethlisberger throwing a touchdown at the end to win it. Chris Hudson almost getting tripped up by, was it Mike Tomlin or was it, I think it was Mike Tomlin that almost tripped. It wasn't a chin, was it? It wasn't Bill Cowher. I'll figure it out before I do the show. Run, Lenny, run, the 97-yarder or 93, 92-yarder that he did up there early. And then when they went back and won the playoff game, the flight home where they hovered over the stadium, and Jalen Ramsey said, we're going to win that blank. Man, all of this stuff. Miles Jack wasn't down the following show on Thursday. I'm not going to tell you too much, though, because I want you to come back tomorrow and listen to them Titans. I got to tell a story. You all know how it ended, but if there's anybody who can make something bad sound good, it's going to be me here on Locked On Jaguars, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Maybe it'll get you ready, too, for the rivalry games with the Titans this year. Maybe make you understand why we don't like them very much. Locked On has launched the first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every angle in every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. I was on there the other day with my man Peter Bukowski talking about Trevor Lawrence getting an extension. What else I'm going to be talking about? Because that's all everybody's talking about. I tell you what we talk about tomorrow. We talk about those damn Titans. We're going to get to it tomorrow. And you guys take care of each other. Make sure you join me here for another edition of Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. And thank you again for making me and us your first listen.